by now, we are nearing the end of our Sunday night series, looking at the temple theme, moving through the Bible. And in a long-anticipated episode, we are now at the end of our Bibles. We started at the very beginning, and we have reached the very end. So, without further ado, turn to Isaiah chapter 65. In Isaiah chapter 65, a phrase is used, and I don't want to say he's necessarily talking about what we see in Revelation 21, but this is where that phrase is used for the first time. And it's going to at least be reused in the New Testament. Isaiah chapter 65, starting in verse 17. For behold, this is God speaking, for behold, I'm creating a new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered or come upon the heart. Be joyful and rejoice forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem for rejoicing, and her people for joy. I will also rejoice in Jerusalem and be joyful in my people, and there will no longer be heard in her the voice of weeping and the voice of crying. No longer will there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not fulfill his days. The youth will die at the age of 100, and the one who does not reach the age of 100 will be thought accursed. They will build houses and inhabit them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They will not build and another inhabit. They will not plant and another eat. For as the lifetime of a tree, so will be the days of my people. And my chosen ones will wear out the work of their hands. They will not labor in vain or bear children for terror. For they are the seed of those blessed by Yahweh, and their offspring with them. And it will be that before they call, I will answer. And while they are still speaking, I will hear. And the wolf and the lamb will graze together. The lion will eat straw like the ox. The dust will be the serpent's food. They will do no evil, nor act corruptly in all my holy mountain, says Yahweh. He continues into chapter 65. Thus says Yahweh, heaven is my throne, and the earth is the footstool of my feet. Where then is a house that you could build for me? And where is a place that I may rest? For my hand made all these things. Thus all these things came into being, declares Yahweh. But to this one I will look, to him who is humble and contrite of spirit, and who trembles at my word. So this whole long prophecy is really foundational to this concept. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it doesn't matter for the purposes of our study tonight exactly what Isaiah is talking about here in Isaiah chapter 65. That's a great discussion that we can have some other time. And no, I don't actually have any idea what he's talking about here. But I want you to notice, if you're familiar with Revelation 21, and more than likely you're more familiar with Revelation 21 than you are with Isaiah 65, but a lot of this sounds like things that are going to be mentioned in Revelation. Some of those little phrases along the way sound very similar. That's because they are. John, when he writes, he's using language that reminds us of this passage. So again, I don't really want to dwell on Isaiah too much. I just want to kind of point that out there, that this phrase has been introduced. Now, I do want to notice here, real quick, in verse 17, look at the parallel that's drawn. And this is going to be important. Isaiah 65:17. Behold, I'm creating a new heavens and a new earth. For the former things will not be remembered or come upon the heart. But be joyful and rejoice in what I create forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem for rejoicing and her people for joy. So here he draws this little equal sign. He's going to use this expression, a new heavens and a new earth. Okay? Now, we haven't talked about what that phrase means, but Isaiah draws a little equal sign, and he's going to use it the same as he talks about Jerusalem. Right? Kind of draws this equal sign. He says, I'm going to create a new heavens and earth, I'm going to create a new Jerusalem. And he talks about them as if it's the same project underway. Okay. Now, in 2 Peter chapter 3, the book of 2 Peter deals a lot. 2 Peter is mostly about the problem of false teachers and the hope we have, and also the fear we have, that basically God is going to punish false teachers. He's going to punish those who are wicked. But God is going to save the righteous. That's really what 2 Peter is all about. Is about that pattern. That throughout time, throughout history, God has always saved the righteous and punished the wicked. And so in 2 Peter chapter 3, he looks at the example of Noah and the flood. And all of these wicked people were destroyed by the flood. But even though God destroyed the world and the wicked who were in it by this flood, God saved Noah and recreated the world for Noah. We've looked at that before. So he draws that parallel. And then I want you to look at we can start in verse 8. Verse 8 through 13. 2 Peter 3, 8 through 13. Do not let this one fact escape your notice, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like one day. In other words, we don't have any clue when God is going to be done with the earth, when Jesus is going to return. It will happen in God's good time. The Lord is not slow about his promise, as some consider slowness, but is patient toward you. The reason he is delayed is because he's being patient, and he is not willing for any to perish, but for all to come to repentance. But eventually, the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which the heavens will pass away with a roar, the elements will be destroyed with intensity, the earth and its works will be burned up or found out. That's another discussion. Since all these things are to be destroyed in this way, what sort of people ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens burning will be destroyed and the elements will melt with intense heat? But according to his promise, we are looking for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. So Peter says, just like God destroyed the world in the days of Noah and then recreated it, God is going to destroy this, except this is going to be much more thorough. God just flooded the world. Okay, he's not talking about flooding the world again. This next time, it's complete. It's thorough. The elements themselves are going to be melted. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. But the existing heavens and earth are going to be destroyed, and there will be a new heavens and a new earth. Now, this is a very controversial discussion. Exactly what Peter means right here. All I can say is that he's describing something new and not something old. Okay? He's not talking about taking what already exists and just cleaning it up a little. He's talking about melting and destroying the whole thing and recreating it. What does it look like when it's recreated? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at. And are we going to come away tonight with answers and know exactly, have this solid picture in our head of exactly what it's really going to look like? No, we're not. Because ultimately, we're going to deal with a lot of figurative language, and it is what it is. You can't describe this totally. But Peter affirms this new heavens and new earth, and he references back to Isaiah. He uses this language that Isaiah mentioned a very, very long time ago. He says 800 years ago, Isaiah was talking about this new heavens and new earth. Maybe he was talking about the one that we're talking about tonight. Maybe he was talking about the church system. Again, that's a whole other discussion. But Peter is here talking not about the church. The church already exists. He's talking about something that we can look forward to, something in which we can have hope. And then we come to Revelation chapter 21. So, having looked at those things quickly, I think that sets us up to read through Revelation 21. Now, notice, I guess one thing I want to mention also. I'll appropriately use the color red. In Revelation chapter 20, you have a description of the opposite of what is described in Revelation chapter 21. And 22. We say 21, but there's a few verses in 22 as well. In Revelation chapter 20, we're told about what happens to everyone else. Now, I mentioned before, it doesn't really matter, because I'm not planning on being there, and you aren't either. And at this point in time, if we can say time, if we are present with God, if we are in this realm, the new heavens and the new earth, the new city, the new Jerusalem, if we're in this land where there is no crying and there is no death and there is no pain and there is no sorrow, we don't care one bit what this other place is like. We don't care one bit about anyone who's there. If we did, there would be mourning in this place. And there is no mourning here. And that's hard for us to wrap our minds around. But I want that to be pretty well fixed in our minds, that these people don't care about what's happening over here. Okay? So, we can look at chapter 20 briefly, at least to notice the conclusion here. That in verse 10, Revelation chapter 20, verse 10, the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are also, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. That's it. We move on. Then, verse 11, I saw a great white throne and him who sits upon it, that's the Father, from whose presence earth and heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. So that's what we read in 2 Peter. The existing heaven and earth, they're gone. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books according to their deeds, and the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every one of them according to their deeds. The sea is a symbol of death. So, as far as I can see here, death, Hades, and the sea are all basically equivalent. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire, and this is the second death, the lake of fire. If anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. So, this judgment occurs where people are dispersed into their proper eternal abodes. And you already read about this, and we don't care about that anymore because it ceases to be relevant. And all of those people cease to be relevant. We move into chapter 21, and look at how this chapter opens. It says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there is no longer any sea." So he's already said that the sea was in death and Hades were cast in it. So there's no more sea, there's no more death, and all that remains in relevant existence, I said relevant, I didn't say that this is annihilated or that this ceases to exist, but all that remains in relevant existence is this new heavens and new earth. Now, what does this phrase mean? Well, it actually goes back even further. You see how the Bible ties itself together? It's just all stitched together very nicely. You see all these things in Revelation that are going to call our minds back to the things we started with in Genesis. In the opening words of the book of Genesis, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And the heavens and the earth represent everything. It represents the universe. It represents all of God's creation. And so if the first heavens and earth, if the first universe, the first mode of existence passes away, then God recreates a new mode of existence. That's all I've got for you on that. Yeah. But I want you to notice he does not say he created a new heaven. Nor does he say he created a new earth. But rather he says he created a new heavens and a new earth. And this sounds like an obvious statement, but misunderstanding these will lead to two different types of misunderstandings of eternity. Now, we're more likely, chances are, to fall into this side of things on the left. Because in our vernacular, we talk about going to heaven. Because, we're just kind of used to saying that at this point. But you'll notice that the New Testament doesn't use that kind of language. And instead it speaks of the heavens and of a new heavens and new earth, which are combined. It also does not say that there is just a recreated earth. It neither says that we are going to be disembodied spirits floating around as imaginary angels with imaginary harps in the clouds. It does not describe anything like that at all. Nor does it describe a world where you get to continue doing all the wonderful things you did, and you get to go fishing and go on long walks and enjoy the crash of the sea by the beach. It is not a place where you'll be rejoined with all of your puppies. That is not what is described at all. Both of these can be misconceptions of heaven. And what is described instead is not a place that is hyper-spiritualized, nor a place that is materialistic, but rather a new creation of some kind. And I don't know what this creation looks like, so don't come after me and tell me I owe you a description, because I don't. All I've got is what it says, and it doesn't say much more than this. It gives us a description, but this description seems to be very figurative, not a literal description. Are parts of it literal? I don't know. I really don't. But it is some kind of a creation. But the emphasis is on the presence of God. And we should be expecting that, since that's the temple theme we've been tracing. When we start in the Garden of Eden and we see God create the first heavens and earth, what was his plan? Why does he do that? What does God intend to do with the first heavens and earth? Does he not create and put him into a garden and see him and dwell with him? And intend for the man and for the woman to procreate and spread the garden and the image of God around the entire temple. And what we see here is precisely that, except that the work has been accomplished. All of the things that God has been working in part through the millennia, all of the things which were accomplished partly in the different stages now come to fulfillment in this new heavens and new earth. The apostle continues to describe what he saw. He saw the new heavens and the new earth. Verse 2, and I saw the holy city, a new Jerusalem. Oh, that gives us another hint that we're referencing back to Isaiah 65. Coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. Now, when you read of a bride adorned for her husband, there are two things you may think of. The first you probably think of is, most reasonably, the church, right? Ephesians chapter 5 describes the relationship between Christ and the church as the relationship between a man and his wife. And this should not surprise us much, because we already saw that the church is a stage of this temple. We saw the church described in prophecy in both Isaiah and Daniel as a mountain, as a place of worship of God. We saw that it was God's intention that there would be these rivers of life that flow out from it, and it's going to make contact and be accessible to all the different nations. And here we see that it is morphing into the New Jerusalem as well. Now, it is not identical. It's not identical. King David was never a part of what we would call the church. The righteous men and women that we read of in Hebrews chapter 11 are never part of the church. But the church is folded into, it's reshaped into the new heavens and the new earth, right? There's a kind of continuity between them. Verse 3, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them. They shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will no longer be any death, there will no longer be any mourning, or crying, or pain. The first things passed away. The same language from Isaiah 65 is brought in, this expression that he will wipe away every tear from their eye. And we see the very explicit statement that the tabernacle of God is with men. We've already looked at the tabernacle. We know that the tabernacle is a kind of temple. So here we see the tabernacle. And of course, tabernacle just refers to a tent, but the use in this text gives us this hint. And you see that this is the fulfillment of work that has been begun in the church. That just as in the church, God dwells among his people, and just as in the church, through the work of Christ, we see that immeasurable joy is achieved. It finds its fulfillment. It bears fruit in a way that it never could fully in the church. It bears fruit out in the new heavens and the new earth. Verse 5, and he who sits on the throne says, behold, I am making all things new. And he said, write, for these words are faithful and true. Those are, by the way, two very key words in the book of Revelation, faithful and true. Then he said to me, they are done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. Now, here's where we start to see some of these symbols. I've mentioned that there are different symbols. I don't know if you can see that blue or not. Can you see that blue? Okay. right? So we've got the spring of life, or this river of life, and he's going to mention it again a few verses down. In the Garden of Eden is the first time we see rivers. We see these 4 rivers which bring life, that flow out from the garden and water the whole earth. And they go out and they spread and they reach their fingers outward. And here we see that the opportunity to drink of this water of life. John talks a lot about water in the Gospel of John. So we have the water of life here. Verse 7, he who overcomes will inherit these things. I will be his God, and he will be my son. But for the cowardly, and the unbelieving, and the abominable, and the murderers, and the sexually immoral persons, and the sorcerers, and the idolaters, and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. This is what the whole book of Revelation is about. The whole book of Revelation is Jesus reminding his church through the pen of the Apostle John that despite the persecution they're enduring, they have to remain true to their witness of the gospel. And if they remain faithful to him, and if they continue to bear witness of the truth, then they will have these blessings in eternity. They are seeking not after anything that's here, not after the heavens and the earth, which are perishable, which are going to be destroyed, but the one that is going to last forever. Then he carried me away, this is verse 10, in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven and from God. Talked about this symbol, the symbol of a mountain that kind of traces through the temple as well. And you can add that to the equal signs over there. Now, you'll notice here the first, really physical description in verses 11 through 21. I'm going to read through this quickly. We're not going to look at the details. I want you to make a general observation about this description. As we read, I want you to think about what shape it's describing and generally what kinds of things he attributes to this. Verse 11, having the glory of God. Her brilliance of the city, her brilliance was like precious stone, a stone of crystal clear jasper. It had a great and high wall. It had 12 gates, and at those gates 12 angels. Names have been written on those gates, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates in the south, 3 gates on the west. And the wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And the one who spoke with me had a gold measuring rod to measure the city and its gates and its wall. And the city is laid out as a square, and its length is as great as the width. And he measured the city with a rod, 12,000 stadia. Its length and width and height are equal. And he measured its wall 144 cubits according to human measurements, which are also angelic measurements. And the measure of the wall was jasper. The city was pure gold, like pure glass. The foundation stones of the city wall were adorned with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation stone was jasper. The second, sapphire. The third, chalcedony. The fourth, emerald. The fifth, sardonyx. The sixth, sardius. The seventh, chrysolite. The eighth, beryl. The ninth, topaz. The 10th, chrysoprase. The 11th, jacinth. And the 12th, amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls, and each one of the gates was a single pearl. The street of the city was pure gold like transparent glass. Okay. Now I'm going to say this again. This entire description is figurative. There is no literal cube city. Okay? But what he describes is a city laid out in this shape. And it's an odd shape, is it not? How is a city shaped like a cube? What would that look like? I mean, we're talking miles long and miles wide and miles high. We don't even have mountains that are miles high. Okay, this is very strangely shaped. Well, I can't draw a straight line either. Okay, well, we're just going to have to go with that. Forgive my isometric drawing. Okay, you got this cube shape. So what is a cube? Why does he mention a cube? Okay, well, that's just one of the things he describes here. Well, what else does he describe? He describes that on each of the 4 sides there are 3 gates, which multiplies that to give you 12. And so you've got 12 foundation stones, 12 gates on the gates, and you've got basically the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes of Israel. So you can kind of see the figure there, right? And it says that the foundation stones are of these precious stones. Now, what is chrysolite? Have any of you heard of that? I have not. No one has. It's right there. That's it. Okay? Like, we know what emerald is, and we know what sapphire is. We even know what beryl and topaz are. Okay, these are things that we're aware of. But a couple of these are just like, we don't even know what these words mean. The point is not, it doesn't matter. Do these specific elements matter? No, they don't matter at all. They're here to list out some precious stones and tell you that they're different. And where your mind perhaps should go when you read of this is to Exodus 28. I know, that was the first thing you were going to think of, right? Exodus 28, verses 15 through 21. You shall make a breastplate of judgment. This is for the high priest. A work of skillful designer. Like the work of the ephod, you shall make it gold, blue, purple, and scarlet material. Fine twisted linen you shall make it. It shall be square, having been folded double, a span in length and a span in width. You shall mount on it 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a row of ruby and topaz and emerald. The second, turquoise, sapphire, and a diamond. The third, a jacinth, an agate, and amethyst. The fourth, a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. They shall be set in gold settings, and the stones shall be according to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 according to their names. They shall be like the engravings of a signet, each according to his name for the 12 tribes. So, you see the similarity? Is it the same list? No, it's not the same list. There's similarity. There's some overlap here. But you can see the connection that's being made here. The high priest's garment is one of the main symbols of the temple. That's his function as the representative of God, or of man to God, in entering into the temple, and he is the bridge between humanity and God. That's his function. Well, we don't need a high priest to serve in that function any longer. And the whole place represents God's togetherness with humanity. We look at the cube shape, and that perhaps should draw our minds to 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 20, where Solomon is building his temple. And he says, 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 20, the inner sanctuary, the most holy place, the inner sanctuary was 20 cubits in length, 20 cubits in width, 20 cubits in height, and he overlaid it with pure gold. Okay, you see the symbolism now? It's not that these elements mean anything by themselves. They don't mean a thing by themselves. They don't represent some great truth for us to divine that's future-facing. There were references back to things that God had already set up in the past. And it's a clue as to what is being described here. And this symbolism right here, with all these beautiful colors and the gold and even the shape of this city, is intended to remind us that what's important about all of this is the presence of God. That's the important part. It isn't really about sardonyx and jasper and sapphires. It's about the presence of God with humanity. Well, as you continue, you see that that point is made very clearly in verse 22. And John says, I saw no sanctuary. Well, if this is supposed to be the New Jerusalem, what's the main feature of the city of Jerusalem? The temple. That's what you're expecting to see. Now, a little context. When John writes this, the city of Jerusalem doesn't have a temple. The temple's been destroyed. So if God is destroying everything and starting over and putting things back the way he wants, John's looking around Jerusalem eagerly to see that temple put back. But the temple isn't put back because God's original plan wasn't to have the temple in Jerusalem. God's plan was to have the temple be among his people. And this sanctuary, this temple, is no longer needed. For the Lord God the Almighty and the Lamb are its sanctuary. God's presence is within the New Jerusalem, within the new heavens and new earth. And he dwells among his people just like he had always intended to do. And the city has no need of the sun or of the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God has illumined it, and its lamp is the Lamb. And all the nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. And its gates will never be closed by day, for there will be no night there, and they will bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. And nothing defiled, and no one who practices abomination and lying shall ever come into it, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Just as God's temple has always been required that it is holy, that it is pure, so also will the new heavens and the new earth, this eternal temple, be perfectly holy. There will be no defiling, which means there's no need for sacrifices. There's no need for all of these fancy ceremonies that occurred under the law of Moses, or even before the law of Moses, or the repentance which we do as Christians. None of that is needed any longer because it is without defilement. And then he showed me, this is 22 verse 1, a river of the water of life, bright as crystal, coming from the throne of God and from the Lamb. There's that river again that we spoke of. Coming from the throne of God and from the Lamb in the middle of its street. On either side of the river, here it is. The symbol we've been looking for was the tree of life. This is the tree that we haven't heard a thing about since the first few pages. It was there and then poof, it was gone. So what does it tell us if we see this tree again? I mean, we assume that God can't just destroy this tree. Otherwise, he doesn't have to send the people out of the garden. He could have left them in the garden and just destroyed the tree. So he doesn't destroy the tree. But we never see the tree again. And here it is brought back. Now, we're all wondering, what does it do? I don't know. Does it do anything? I don't know if it does anything at all. I don't know if there's really going to be a tree there or not. It's a symbol. It draws our attention. If you see that someone says the tree of life, well, what are we talking about? We're talking about Eden. There's a word that we use. Does it use the word here? I thought it used it somewhere over here. No. It's in chapter... Look at chapter 2, Revelation chapter 2, verse 7. Chapter 2, verse 7. Each of these letters has some kind of reference to the new heavens and the new earth, as it's described. And here he says, "To him who overcomes, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." The word paradise, can y'all read the pink? I don't know if pink is visible or not. I never know which colors are visible. They're all visible to me. I'm up close. The word paradise, does anyone know what it means? The word paradise just means garden. It comes from a Persian word. It means garden. I will give him to eat of the tree of life, which is in the garden of God. By putting the tree there, he tells us it's all come full circle. That the plan God had in the garden has finally been achieved. It sure took a long time. But God was always going to get back to it. He never abandoned his plan. He never lost sight of wanting to dwell along with his people in a place where he gives them life. He never lost sight that he wanted to dwell with them in this beautiful place. This is something I haven't really talked much about, but each of these descriptions has been beautiful. Have you noticed that? The garden is a beautiful place. The tabernacle was designed to be beautiful. It was more rugged than the temple, but it was still beautiful. There was all this fine detailing. And there was a man named Bezalel who is said to have been gifted by God. He was imbued with the power of the Holy Spirit to create beautiful things. He was an artist. He's the first real artist that we see in the Bible, and he's gifted to create the beautiful things that belong in the tabernacle. He's the architect, the designer of the tabernacle. And then Solomon's temple was world-renowned for its beauty. And here again, we see a place, all these gemstones, something of beauty. It is intended to be wonderful and to be enjoyed. And that's what God describes. Okay, Revelation 22, last couple verses. Verse 3, there will no longer be any curse. Mankind was kicked out of the garden for their sin. The ground was cursed. The man was cursed. The woman was cursed. But in this heavens and earth, there will be no more curse. And the throne of God and the Lamb will be in it, and his slaves will serve him. And they will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. I don't know if this is exactly what he means by this, but in the Levitical system, the high priest wore the King James says mitre. I don't know what a mitre is, but he wears some kind of special cap or hat. And there was a label, a title on it, which said, "Holiness to Yahweh." And that was something he would wear on his head as he performed his duties. And he was authorized to wear this. And this is very special to have God's name carried on your forehead. And here, all of the inhabitants of the city are brought to this position. Throughout time, there has been a division between the outer court and the holy place and the most holy place. Do you see any divisions here? There's no division. In fact, the whole thing is shaped like the most holy place. And that's all that's left. Everything else has fallen away. Everything else has disintegrated or vanished into irrelevance. And yet, we are still permitted to be there. Even though we have never been high priests, now we are seemingly elevated in our role to serve as kings and priests, along with the Lamb inside of this eternal temple. It's really a beautiful picture. And think, all of this beautiful imagery and the development of the process, none of this would have meant nearly as much if we had just jumped straight here. It's in seeing the process that God works in and the work which He has been building up for thousands of years to get to this point. And this is yet future. When we talk about the hope that we have, this is what we have hope in. And notice that all of this, in reality, all of this centers on a single concept, which has been the single concept of the temple from the very beginning. The reason it's beautiful and the reason there is life is because of the presence of God. And that God is together with His people. And that is the hope that we have together. And I certainly hope and pray that we will all meet again someday in that place.